And we've got people signing in. Just to let our guests know, we'll be starting in about 60 seconds. Well, welcome everybody to the 8th in the coffee series sponsored by the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership here at Seton Hall University. I'm Reggie Lewis, the center's executive director, and it's great to greet you from our campus here in South Orange, New Jersey. The coffee series provides an opportunity to showcase the inspirational stories of servant leaders. Each of our guests has deepened our understanding of the premise of this leadership philosophy and the endless ways in which individuals, organizations, and society in general can be transformed for the better. And I assure you that our guest today will not disappoint. The Honorable Thomas P. Giblin is the Deputy Majority Leader of the New Jersey Legislature. Assemblyman Giblin was elected to the Assembly in 2005 and has been reelected ever since. He's also served as Essex County Surrogate, a member of the Board of Chosen Freeholders, and as chairman of both the County of Essex and State Democratic Committees. As Assemblyman, he has served as Vice Chair of the Higher Education Committee. Mr. Giblin is also Business Manager of the 5,800 member Local 68 of the International Union of Operating Engineers. He also serves on a number of advisory boards, including the Rutgers University School of Management and Labor Relations and the Seton Hall University College of Arts and Sciences. And how convenient, since our distinguished Mr. Giblin is a graduate of Seton Hall University, class of '69, holding a Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science. He has also served as a member of the New Jersey Air National Guard, attaining the rank of Sergeant. We are so pleased and honored to have you here today, Mr. Giblin, and we're looking forward to our conversation with you. But before we begin, a word about the Greenleaf Center. We were founded in 1964, and for well over 50 plus years, I'm giving us more years than we logged in. For over 50 years, the center has worked to promote the understanding, awareness, and practice of servant leadership, a philosophy in which the leader first seeks to serve. The center's portfolio includes 5 signature programs, including the Greenleaf Academy, which supports professionals in deepening their foundational knowledge about servant leadership through online learning opportunities. We also have the Greenleaf Scholars Program, which provides small mini grants to support research scholars doing research in the area of servant leadership. We're also pleased about the new program known as our Next Generation Initiative, which introduces high school students to the principles and practices of servant leadership. We have what is known as our annual Robert K. Greenleaf Public Policy Lecture, which we will launch next month. And we're honored that former White House Domestic Policy Advisor Cecilia Munoz will serve as our guest lecturer. And of course, we have the coffee series where we welcome distinguished guests like the Assemblyman. You can learn more about ways to become involved with our center a bit later in the program or by visiting greenleaf.org. So let's begin. Mr. Assemblyman, have you got your coffee ready?
I have my coffee ready here. Will I need 1 cup or 2 cups?
All right. Well, I'm super excited to have you as my guest today, and we'll get right into our first category known as the early days. First of all, though, I want everybody to know that Mr. Giblin is my, as they say, my homeboy, as they say. He was born in the great city of East Orange, and not enough people know about that. But we also know that you grew up in the town across the way, Newark, the state's largest city. Tell us about what it was like growing up in Newark.
Well, first of all, I had 5 in my family, and all of us were born at East Orange General. So I'm not sure if my mother got a package plan to kind of refer all those births to that particular hospital, but it's still standing today. I grew up in what is known as the West Ward of Newark, also known above the Parkway as the Balesburg section of Newark. Most of the people in the Balesburg section were blue collar people. If I thought about my neighborhood or my street, I could go down the block and people either were firemen or policemen or worked for the Board of Education or were tradespeople, electricians, carpenters, people like that. And, you know, everybody kind of knew each other, believe it or not, at a relatively young age. Just about all of the mayors and council and things like that I knew in Newark. It was a big city in a lot of ways. At that time, the population was probably around 440,000. And of course, it's dipped since that period of time, but we did get to know each other, and I still have fond memories of my time growing up in Newark, and in particular, the West Ward in Balesburg.
And did you attend what was known as Valesburg Middle, or did you just go right to Seton Hall Prep?
No, what happened was we had a Catholic school on South Orange Avenue in Newark, Sacred Heart School. It was widely attended. In fact, not that long ago, I was looking at my graduation program from 8th grade, and I counted up the names. And we had 162 kids graduate from school that year. So if you times that by 8, literally we had somewhere in the vicinity of about 1,150, 1,200 kids going to school. They were literally hanging out the window. And then after that, the parish subsidized our high school education. Boys had an opportunity to go to Seton Hall Prep, St. Benedict's, or Essex Catholics, which, and then the girls, the flip side, either had an opportunity to go to St. Vincent Academy, East Orange Catholic, or Archbishop Walsh. The tuition for Seton Hall Prep at that time was about $300, $350, which is a far cry from what it is today. I think the last time I heard tuition at Seton Hall Prep, which moved from South Orange to West Orange in 1984, is around $17,000. But you know, the tuition was underwritten by the parish to the tune of about 50%.
Wow. And we're going to talk a bit more about your educational background. But before we do that, I know the audience is curious if you could talk about some of your heroes, perhaps from the neighborhood or from New Jersey in general. Like who were some of your heroes as you were growing up?
Well, our congressman from Newark at that time was, you know, Peter Rodino. He was elected in the Truman landslide in 1948. Vincent J. Murphy was a good friend of my father, John Giblin. He was the mayor of Newark and later went on to become the first president of the New Jersey State. Ava Bell, CIO. And there was many people in the community, a lot of them in elected office that I got to know and respect because of their commitment to Newark, and many labor people. I could think about different trade organizations or labor unions, and you know, remember fondly who the leadership was and what the contribution in particular was to Newark and the greater Essex County area.
Wow. Wow. Quite rich. Seton Hall Prep, athletics, extracurriculars. Tell us about it.
I played intramural sports. You basketball, softball, and then as far as other activities, I had a job with the Pirate, which was the student newspaper. My job was, they called me the inquiring reporter. I think that was the proper name of it. And basically what would happen is each month the paper would come out and I would get a question. And my job was to seek out a senior, junior, sophomore, freshman and get a response from them about the question of the month. I'd be responsible for making sure I had a picture of them that would go in the paper. And then also with the yearbook, which was called the Tower, I was involved with that, either putting together, some anecdotes about graduates for that particular year, or trying to secure ads, or whatever it took in terms of trying to put the yearbook together. I remember doing that. And then they had different organizations like the Knights of Setonia, which had a little bit of a religious connotation, but there are things that come to my memory.
Majoring in political science, so that you have an inkling even then that you wanted to eventually pursue a career in government or elected office? Did you know you wanted to go into politics?
Well, I knew closely, like I said, my father had been in elected office as a freeholder, but still I knew a lot of I could go back and at that time name every councilman that was elected in Newark under the form of government, and things like that. I originally wanted to go to law school, but I got diverted to another career path. But people told me that having like a liberal arts degree probably would be helpful as far as getting into graduate school or law school.
I'm just going to ask Ms. Cruz to mute her microphone.
Oh, okay. So I'm leaving the paper mill. They did donate 2 tickets.
Wow.
Ms. Cruz, you need to mute your microphone.
2 tickets and then a gift card for
That's
the
not me.
house
That's
for
not me.
stuff like that.
That's
So
not me.
Okay, someone needs to mute their microphone.
I guess we should put them both out.
Well, should we put 2 tickets and a gift certificate, or and then 2
Yes,
tickets?
someone in Mr. Giblin's office is logged in as a panelist.
I don't.
What's the name?
The gift certificate that they give you is only for like 2 shows. They don't have what they donate is like 2.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tim. Sorry, Mr. Giblin.
Okay. Sounds like we're going to the paper mill. Okay.
We're going to go into our second category with respect to your career and your impressive work with the International Union of Operating Engineers. Tell us, before we get into what your role is there, tell us about the history of Local 68.
Well, I mean, I'll try to do it in the best I can in an abbreviated fashion. My father, John Giblin, came to the United States as an immigrant teenager. One of his very first jobs he attained at the Prudential Insurance Company in Newark. This was during the height of the Depression, and he got a job for 1 day a week as an oiler. And how he got that job was through the intercession of William J. Brennan, Sr., who was the father of the Supreme Court Justice. William J. Brennan, Sr. was born basically in the same area of Ireland as my father. Brennan was a very powerful man in that he was also the Commissioner of Public Safety for the city of Newark, wherein he had the ability to hire police officers and firemen. So together with his union career, he could put people to work. So my father opted to take this job in Prudential, and that was the start of his career path. He worked in the Prudential for 14 years. He left there in 1943. He later went to work in a brewery in Newark called Fagenspons, which was in the Ironbound section of Newark. Later went to work for the Newark Board of Education as supervisor of heating and repairs. And then in 1948, the union's membership was about 300 members. He was elected business manager, and that was the start of his career as an official of the International Union of Operating Engineers. The International Union of Operating Engineers is based in Washington, D.C. It's a nationwide organization covering about 400,000 members. The type that work that we do, as far as Local 68 is concerned, we're considered a stationary local. So when you think about office buildings or power plants or shopping malls or sports centers, we maintain the heating, air conditioning, and refrigeration of these facilities, and then also do some maintenance work in conjunction with these same facilities. I kind of call ourselves building service professionals.
Building service professionals, indeed.
Well, in other words, like, I could go up and down, for example, Broad Street in Newark, and the people would be responsible in the wintertime for the heat from the boilers. And then the flip side, in the summertime, have the responsibility to run the refrigeration equipment and the chillers and things like that to provide air conditioning and other forms of comfort to the tenants and people who are working in the building. And the same thing with maintaining issues regarding the elevators or escalators or minor plumbing or electrical issues that needed to be addressed.
Again, where would we be without these building service professionals who perform many roles and duties that we sometimes take for granted? But the union obviously also supports, in addition to a lot of its members, I know that Local 68 in particular is quite involved in the community. This is very much in line with servant leadership, in which the leader first seeks to serve. Tell our audience why this approach to leadership, servant leadership, is important to you and to members of the union.
Well, a couple reasons. One, over the years, off the top of my head, I could probably think of about a half a dozen schools, primarily private. I'll give you an example. St. Vincent's Academy. I was sought out some years ago by an administrator of the school. The school was in bad shape, the physical plant. She asked for help, and the other side of the coin was they had very limited resources. So we got sweat equity where we painted the facility, looked at the electrical issues, maintained the boilers, was able to get a roof provided at no cost. It gave practical experience, especially to our newer members of the organization. But in terms of community service, I think it's important that the labor movement be recognized as a good neighbor, whether it be Newark or Atlantic City or throughout the state. That it's not a one-way street. It's about giving back and trying to be of support for many civic and charitable worthwhile organizations. We have a Local 68 charity fund, for example, and you name it, just about every type of organization in the state seeks us out as far as support is concerned. We run a pretty extensive food drive coming up with the holidays. We've done turkey drives. We've done many, many other things of a supportive nature, to try to maintain these worthwhile civic and community groups.
Absolutely. And you've been doing this for quite a bit of years. And yet what's interesting is how Local 68 continues to thrive and remain true to its purpose, while union membership around the country is on the decline. Speak to how you all managed to remain whole while still focused on serving the community.
Well, I'll give you an example. Our jurisdiction or the companies that we represent, take example, Newark, New Jersey. I could give you a litany of companies that might have existed 30, 40, 50 years ago that are no longer with us. We had a number of breweries, we had a number of bakeries, we had a number of ice cream and milk producing companies, companies that made pillows, companies that made zippers. Our jurisdiction keeps evolving. And the key to our maintaining our market share is education is a big component of the union's operation. We have training programs in West Cornwall and Atlantic City. We have instructors who are certified by the New Jersey Division of Vocational Education. And there's different aspects to our career that new apprentices learn. And then the other side is that you have to go out and try to organize new sites. New companies come in the area, new jurisdiction occurs. One of the areas that we're working on now as we speak is that this whole issue of wind turbines, which is occurring in South Jersey, off the coast down by Atlantic City. That's going to provide an opportunity for construction and also maintenance jobs that'll help with some of the work losses in the casino industry, for example. So it's, I do use the two words that come to mind are education and organizing.
Education and organizing and taking advantage of new trends and opportunities. The work concerning wind turbines down in AC sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah, well, you can't rest on your laurels. It's like everything else in life. You've had successes, but don't get too complacent. And you got to seize new opportunities if they're presented to you. To figure out how you get involved in putting that under the union jurisdiction.
Absolutely.
Technology is changing so much.
Absolutely. While you take a sip of water or something, I'm going to move us to our third category of public service. And as our audience is aware of what an impressive record of public service. You've held so many positions, Essex County Board of Chosen Freeholders, Essex County Surrogate. Of course, you've been a part or a member of the New Jersey Assembly since 2006. I cited in my intro your service as chair of both Essex and the state Democratic committees. As you look back, Assemblyman, is there one particular role that you enjoyed most of all?
Well, I enjoyed being an Essex County freeholder. I was a freeholder for 10 years. Most recently, they changed the name of freeholder to county commissioner. On the local level, like on a countywide basis, this was before the advent of the county executive form of government. You were assigned a particular committee and you were able to kind of maybe resolve things, with constituent requests a little bit easier. And in terms of trying to help people, I enjoy that. I mean, all the different roles I've had, I might add that I ran for assembly going way back in 1973. The only thing is I lost that particular year and I ran against a giant of an individual, even to this day, with a tremendous reputation, the Honorable Thomas Kane Sr. And it was a tough road. The district had been just carved out. It includes parts of Essex, parts of Passaic, and parts of Morris. And especially in Passaic and Morris, I was virtually unknown. And I just had to go out there and try to introduce yourself to the electorate. I actually have copies of a Newark News article that said I had won that election, and I wasn't that cocky. I wound up losing the election by approximately 1,000 votes in a district that Tom Kane himself had carved out after the reapportionment after the 1970 census.
Well, I'm going to make a trip to your office so I can take a glimpse of that Newark News article, maybe even take a photo of that. And certainly that early experience gave you plenty of name recognition. Isn't that fair to say? I mean, it set you up nicely for what came later.
When I look back on it, losing wasn't the most, wasn't devastating. Everybody, of course, likes to win and be in the winner's circle, but it gave you a little humility. It gave you determination to keep trying. And losing sometimes is not the end of the world. A lot of it's state of mind, and persistence is probably one of the biggest virtues in politics and in government, that you've got to keep on chugging away despite some of the obstacles or what you face along the way.
Absolutely. Just out of curiosity, when you think about your time, particularly as a member of the Board of Freeholders, where there was a lot of work with respect to constituency services. Obviously, you continue that custom and tradition today through the great staffs of your assembly office. But is it harder or a little easier to connect with constituents today, particularly in light of the technology? Sometimes technology can sort of get in the way of things, but what's your take on the ability to remain authentically in touch with the people you serve?
Well, just trying to compare apples and oranges. When I was elected a freeholder early on, my district was the entire county. I was elected at large. So people would call you from Belleville, they would call you from Irvington, they would call you from West Cornwall. So you were all over the place. And then when you ran for election, you needed more resources than it is now with single districts. We have maybe a fifth of the county. So that was one issue. And a lot of times we're trying to be of help as far as constituent services is, having an ability to know who to contact, to try to adjudicate an issue. So, there was an issue about somebody at the Essex County Geriatric Center, you'd call maybe the head of aging, for example, or something with the vocational school, you'd have a relationship with the superintendent of schools. I happen to serve on both the college and the vocational school system under school board of estimate. So you got a relationship developed with either the president, the college, or the superintendent of school. So all of that pays off. And then same thing as far as responding to people who call you, at least hear them out. You can't hit home runs every time you get up to the plate, but at least most people just want to feel that you made a good faith effort, to try to help them with their particular dilemma or situation.
And I'm super proud to be able to say, not just because you're from East Orange, but also because you've been my assemblyman for quite some time, since my days at Clifford Scott High School. One of the great things about you as our assemblyman is the fact that you are known for being a solid listener and always hearing a constituent out. And people know that if nothing else, they're going to get a hearing from you. And that's one of the great things about the Assemblyman Giblin. The other thing is your reputation for taking on the tough issues facing our state: healthcare, education, transportation, the environment. Again, as you look back over your impressive legislative career, what are you most proud of?
Well, I mean, healthcare is a major issue. I mean, there's a disparity among different racial and ethnic groups. We've taken a lot of steps in recent years to kind of close that gap, but especially during the challenges now with COVID-19, we've seen the disparity once again. Health insurance is very expensive. In one of my other hats, I am a trustee of a union welfare fund, and the cost of healthcare insurance is off the Richter scale. And trying to negotiate contracts, to have an ability to pay for that, and then trying to look at different programs that'll help people with their individual needs, whether it be heart or diabetes or cancer or whatever be the case. We also have a program which is unique to labor movement, employee assistance program. We're one of the few unions in the state that sponsors a program like this. Basically, that's geared about trying to help people who might have problems with drug addiction or alcohol or even emotional issues, either with themselves or spouse or kids. We are our brothers and sisters keeper, and we don't want to see anybody go off the reservation or cause themselves any type of harm where they could lose their job or result in termination. So we try to do a lot of preventive measures in terms of trying to help members. And you see it pretty much a whole composite as far as that's concerned.
Wonderful. And clearly we are our brother's keeper. And the great thing about your work is the fact that so many people have had their lives changed for the better as a result of these numerous programs and services. I'm going to shift now a bit before we take questions from the audience to our last category around this whole notion of preserving a public discourse. It's fair to say that it's a tough time to serve and hold elective office in our current climate in America. It's not easy to be bipartisan, if you will. And of course, here at the Greenleaf Center, we support all efforts to get leaders, regardless of party affiliations, to think in terms of Robert Greenleaf's credo of creating a more just and caring society. On some days, and I do have a few friends who think that I'm sort of ascribing to some pie in the sky, just curious as to your thoughts on this and whether or not there's still hope for folk on with opposing ideological views to sort of bridge the divide and work more closely together. Am I naive in thinking that way?
Well, I mean, I think your sense about the different divides that exist today is accurate. I mean, you see it on the national level. Right now, we're discussing the whole issue about the infrastructure package being proposed by President Biden. And you see people really, throw the gauntlet down and, my way or the highway type of attitude. And maybe I'm the eternal optimist, or is the glass half empty or half full? No, you have to keep on trying to bridge that divide about bringing people together. I take a great deal of interest in the various racial and ethnic and religious groups throughout Essex County or New Jersey. I seek out the leadership of these organizations because I think it's always good to have a dialogue or rapport. Nobody ever agrees 100% of the time, but at least if an issue crops up, that you can get them on the phone, talk to them about it, meet with them, and try to see if there's any middle ground or consensus that can be achieved. We're all stakeholders in this experiment we call democracy, and it's good to kind of listen to another viewpoint, and they might have a different way of addressing an issue, and the only way you do that is by having that type of dialogue and bringing people together. So, like I said, if you achieve 3/4 or 60% or 50%, it's better than not meeting and not discussing and things like that. So there's no loss in that. And I think it's essential that if we really want to do what it takes to improve in our state or our nation, that all of the people who are listening and your students and people like that, all at Seton Hall, that it's something we have to persevere on. As I said initially, perseverance is one of our biggest virtues in government and in politics.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for that. To our audience, we are taking questions through our chat and Q&A here. So please feel free to forward or send in your questions for the Assemblyman. So we're opening up for questions. And while we load up on questions, just curious as to any of your thoughts about lessons from the pandemic, although we're not quite out of it just yet, but any thoughts about what we've learned from the last sort of 18 months?
Well, as we all know, it's something none of us ever experienced in our lifetimes. And we have to, sit back. We might need a commission the way they did after the World Trade Center bombing, like the Kane Commission, to get together and look at all aspects of this whole pandemic. We're prepared with our fire safety or police safety or our medical supplies, housing, all the emergencies and contingencies that popped up. And I think it needs a full sweeping review, not necessarily to be critical about any particular entity, whether it be the state or the county or local, but I think more or less look on it as a learning experience to make us that much better qualified for the future, because we've seen so many natural disasters. I mean, just the issues over the last several months, with the flooding and storms and things like that. And I kind of tie it together with the COVID, but if we don't learn something from it, then we're missing an opportunity for that. And I don't think it has to be anything necessarily negative. I think it could be positive. Maybe we need to put more resources in certain areas to keep us up to speed, or have better alliances with our federal government or state government or military, or cooperation among our police departments, whatever it takes, where we can address this matter.
Absolutely. And one of the lessons that you certainly are hitting on is the significance around coordination across the various levels of government.
We got to make the dollar.
State,
We got to make the dollar stretch.
Yes.
We all know there's challenges, and we see people are about raising taxes and things like that. So whatever money's out there, we got to get the maximum use out of it, and try to do things a little bit different. And I think there'll definitely be changes for the better as a result of this challenge of the.
Absolutely. We have a question. Our first question. Let's see. Good afternoon, Assemblyman Giblin. Women are making progress in terms of getting elected in public office, but it is still a small percentage. What is your advice for women who are interested in public office? Thank you for the question.
Well, during my particular career, I've noticed a dramatic increase in the number of women, in the legislature, either in the Senate or the Assembly. Even when you look at our congressional delegation, Mikey Sherrill and Bonnie Watson Coleman, for example, just off the top of my head. We've had people who have aspired for governor, things like that. I think that the same virtues that apply to other gender candidates should fall the same as far as a woman is concerned. I know this might sound a little controversial, but I hearken back to the days of candidacy of Hillary Clinton. I found that women were a little bit tougher on Hillary than men were. I know that might stir some controversy, but I'm being candid with you as far as that's concerned. That there are definitely qualified people in our midst. One of my own children, Noreen Giblin, has spent almost her whole adult career in government. I mean, she worked for governors, she worked for United States senators, she worked on the local level, legislative office. So, and she seems to get a lot of satisfaction out of that. So we have to be mentors too, to not provide opportunities for leadership. I noticed that Senator Teresa Ruiz was just elevated to the position of majority leader in the New Jersey State Senate, which is quite an achievement for Teresa. I know her a long time before she had elected office, but she's well up to the job, and will be an opportunity for her even to move beyond that, because she's young enough, and I know she'll be able to demonstrate that she has what it takes to do an effective job.
Absolutely. We certainly welcome other questions. What advice do you have for any youth that are trying to get their feet wet in your area of work? And I thank you for Timothy on my team for that great question.
Well, I mean, to get involved in government or politics, whether you want to do it on a local level, county level, state level, getting involved with community organizations, whatever it takes. United Way, being a coach on a softball league, giving back, volunteering. It's a good way of networking and get to meet people, and then you have to really stake out which direction you want to go in, what party, whether it be Democrat or Republican, or it's important with that. They have a whole structure as far as the party is concerned about becoming district leaders and town municipal chairs and all the way up the ladder. So that's a start as far as that's concerned. So if you're in a certain town, you really have to get known from one end of the town to another, whether even attending council meetings or commissioner meetings, just to understand, appreciate the issues they're dealing with.
I'm hearing you saying that there are plenty of opportunities to be involved and to serve. You just have to get out there.
Well, it takes time. There's no two ways about it, about your participation.
Absolutely. Another question is, looking back on your professional and public service, would you do anything differently?
What I've done, I made mistakes over the years, and perhaps in some elections. I had an interesting election. I don't know if the viewers remember this, but 1994, I ran for Essex County Executive.
I remember that.
And I had a tie vote. Myself and my opponent each got 22,907, right on the nose. And that was really a roller coaster ride as far as that was concerned. And I later dropped out because the legal costs in terms of trying to move forward were prohibitive. I had about 3 kids in college at the same time, and it was coming out of my pocket. So I have no regrets. It was a tremendous experience, but there's certainly things that you do is it's live and learn, and you have to look back on your mistakes and learn from that. It's another notch on your belt, or another experience that you have to use it in a positive way. You can't keep dwelling on yesterday, because that doesn't accomplish too much. You have to just dust yourself off. I could have done this better or that better, and like I said, keep on plugging.
Thank you for that response, and thank you for a wonderful opportunity to spend time with you today. To our audience, I did say that Assemblyman Giblin would not disappoint. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Mr. Giblin, for the much needed motivation and inspiration you've given us all today. We are so grateful for all the ways in which you have served and continue to serve the state of New Jersey. We are all the better for it. Now, before we go, we certainly want to invite our audience and others to become more involved with the Greenleaf Center. There are still, I should say, there's still time to sign up for our Key Practices of Servant Leadership online course, which begins on December the 9th. So please log on to greenleaf.org and sign up and learn more about servant leadership. We are super pleased to talk about our first annual public policy lecture featuring Cecilia Munoz, former director of the White House Domestic Policy Council under President Obama. We are taking registrations as we speak. We've got an impressive respondent panel who will follow her keynote. Deborah Smith Gregory, president of the NAACP Newark. Kyle Rosenkrantz, executive director of the New Jersey Children's Foundation. Christopher Imyholz, vice president of the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. And the panel, or I should say the all-star panel, will be moderated by former Newark Star-Ledger reporter Carol Lucas. So you don't want to miss our first annual public policy lecture. Go to greenleaf.org and learn about our various initiatives. We welcome memberships as well. We thank Assemblyman Giblin for being with us today, and we thank all of you for joining us. Take good care and have a great weekend.
Go Seton Hall.
Go Seton Hall. Take care. See ya.
Good.